Paul Kurtz, author of the Humanist Manifesto 2000, says, as humanists, we urge today, as in the past, that humans not look beyond themselves for salvation. We alone are responsible for our own destiny, and the best we can do is muster our intelligence, courage, and compassion to realize our highest aspirations. What's wrong with this statement? To realize our highest aspiration. What question has to be asked next? Whose aspirations? In the 20th century, what did you have? You had a century of competing highest aspirations. And they all thought they were going to bring about what? Utopia. Hey, which utopian vision worked? Which utopian vision made the world better? None of them. They all made the world what? Worse. Listen, the next time somebody steps up and goes, hey guys, I've got it, I'll fix the world, run. Or go shoot that guy. Because he is going to bring an awful lot of pain and suffering. It's just a really, really bad idea. In fact, the secularist legacy, here's what it is. Let me give you the secularist legacy. It's utopian dreams built on Darwinian assumptions. The Darwinian assumptions is this idea that we can actually control our evolution and move the human race where? Forward. Did it work? Two promises of secularism for utopia. The first one was the promise of eugenics. What's eugenics? Do you know what eugenics is? How many of you guys have heard that word eugenics before? What is eugenics? Do you know what it is? Yeah, it's essentially, do you want to add something to it? Yeah, it's the idea that you can genetically produce a better human being or a perfect human race, right? The idea was, well, we've been able to fix animals. We've been able to make better animals by breeding. So we can do the same thing with humans, right? Now, when you think of the word eugenics, developing a perfect race, who do you think of in the 20th century? The Nazis, right? Because they were championing the Aryan race. But where did the Nazis get their ideas? No. They got them from American intellectuals. You want to lose sleep when you go home? Google this phrase, eugenics in America. Google it, seriously. You'll be shocked. You know what you'll find? You'll find that even though two Germans were the ones who came up with the idea of eugenics in terms of a book, right? American intellectuals seized it. They jumped on it and they started to write about it. And you see people like Henry Ford and John D. Rockefeller financing eugenics projects. All across America at county fairs, there were what was called fit family contests. That if you could show from your family history that you had no imbecility or a low IQ in your family, and you had no mixed races in your family or anything like that, and you were blonde-haired, blue-eyed, white, and so on, then you won a prize for being the best family in the county. You'll see things way worse than that. You'll read about the little African-American kids who were picked up down in South Alabama and promised candy in a party, and when they woke up, they were sterilized. They didn't know it. They were sterilized against their will and against their knowledge. They only found out later on when they tried to have babies and they couldn't. You read about Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes, Supreme Court Justice, who takes a case in the Supreme Court about whether in the state of Virginia they can forcibly sterilize an African-American girl because of her low IQ. And the arguments were, she has a low IQ, her mom has a low IQ, her grandma has a low IQ, and Oliver Wendell Holmes grants the mandatory sterilization of this woman against her will because they say, get this, and I quote in his opinion, 3 generations of imbeciles is enough. This was happening in America. One of the key voices of this, Margaret Sanger. Margaret Sanger ran a magazine called the Birth Control Review. She was also part of the second utopian project, which is the idea of sexual freedom. Sanger connected these two. What Sanger thought is that we could have utopia if we had birth control. Why? Because first of all, it would let women have orgasms without any sort of responsibility. And secondly, we could actually control the lesser population, or what she called the unfit, from having babies. Who did she think were the unfit? African Americans and the poor. She thought poverty was actually partly genetic. By the way, you won't find this on Planned Parenthood's website. I'll just tell you that. You have to look a little deeper. She was the founder of Planned Parenthood. When she gave up control of her magazine called the Birth Control Review, her chosen successor, the next year, get this, published a feature headline article on eugenics written by the Nazis, the Third Reich's top eugenic scientist. And all the editors wrote in and said, we should be ashamed of ourselves because They're doing this in Germany. They're using our ideas, and now they're way ahead of us. We need to catch up. The mayor of Chicago wrote a congratulatory letter to Adolf Hitler saying, congratulations on the start of this eugenics program. It's going to make the world a better place. That's insane. It's insane. Margaret Sanger herself started something called the Negro Project. The Negro Project's goal was to eliminate or curb the black population. She paid black pastors $100 to preach sermons telling their people to go get sterilized or to get on birth control. $100. The goal of the Negro Project was to curb or eliminate the black population. And what's happened since then is Planned Parenthood now targets minority neighborhoods. 80% of Planned Parenthood abortion clinics are in minority neighborhoods. African Americans are 11% of the population. They have 40% of the abortions. 60% of black babies in New York City are aborted. 60%. The Negro Project has been quite successful, hasn't it? I was telling all these statistics and going through this at a prep school in Chattanooga, and this sharp African American kid in the back row just got furious. He said, "Why has no one ever told me this before?" I'm like, "I'm sorry. It's not on Planned Parenthood's website." You know where you find it? I'll give you two sources to find it. Number one, Edwin Black. His enormous book called The War Against the Weak. It's an important book, and here's why. Black was a secularist Jewish liberal who wanted to demonstrate the church's co-option by the Nazi Party in the Holocaust, and he wrote a book on it. And by the way, there was a lot of co-option that Hitler did of the church. But while he was doing this, he started to uncover all this correspondence going back between the Nazis and American secularist intellectuals, and it ticked him off as a Jewish guy. And so then he wrote this book called The War Against the Weak. If you want a good summary of The War Against the Weak, I don't think we have The War Against the Weak in the bookstore, but we have this one. It's a book by Jonah Goldberg, and it's called Liberal Fascism. It's a red cover with a big happy face on the front. Liberal Fascism, chapter 6, I believe, on Margaret Sanger. And here's the irony. The irony was the promise was sexual freedom. We'll take sexuality outside of the family. We'll take sexuality and separate it from childbirth. We'll take sexuality and separate it from marriage, right? Hey, how many guys are on college campuses now? You're at college, right? Secular universities, yeah. Are the people around you, are they sexually free? It depends on what you mean by what? Free. Because, yeah, they're sexually active, but do they feel good about themselves? Are they really excited? I mean, you see what I mean? Here's the thing. The irony of this word freedom is that it's made us sexual slaves. What's that tell you about the definition of the word freedom that we've got if it makes you a slave? It's a dumb one.